much, Professor Abhishek Rangsit, for your good comment on Dr. Sawaran's work. Now the floor is open for anyone who would like to make comments, reflection, question, or criticism. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Big thanks, of course, for the invitation. A very interesting subject for me. My name is Sandro Calvani. I have an Italian passport, but I spent all my life outside my country. I spent all my life in the United Nations, serving the concept of justice and sustainable development all over the world. My job brought me to 135 countries around the world, in particular in situations of stress, where there was poverty or there was war. In particular, I visited 65 countries in situation of wars and humanitarian situation. So I had an in-depth relationship with the real life of people who are deeply unhappy, those who cannot contribute much to a global higher level of happiness because they have not reached the first basic needs that Dr. Sawalak presented. So that is the big challenge of humankind nowadays, for humankind as such. So having spent a life in the United Nations, I think I can also say that the United Nations is now a significant part of the problem. Why? First, because it is not United Nations. It is not united. There is not a united goal of the nations. And second, because they are nations. And by definitions, nations tend to defend themselves instead of defending the earth, the planet, or the humankind. Since now I teach in the university since 5 years, I often use the first speech of President Obama to the General Assembly of the United Nations. The first case in the human history where a president gets a Nobel Peace Prize to the intention, because that was a prize to the intention. He has not done anything in his life. He got a Nobel Peace Prize to the intention, because he had a good intention. One of his first tasks was to speak at the United Nations. And he started by saying, hey, I wish to make one thing clear. I'm here, and the United States are here, principally to defend our interests, which are very important to my heart, and never expect that I will put the interest of others before the interest of the United States. Wow, that was his first statement. Remember, he was a Nobel Peace Prize. What does it mean? It means my nation is more important than yours, which also means for the other 193 nations that they are allowed to think the same. Because if the United States is allowed to put his nation before the others, of course also China can do it. Of course also Italy or Korea or Germany can do it. Luckily enough, he then added, however, we now discovered that we are all in the same boat. So the interest of my nation is the same interest of humankind. I cannot protect the interest of the United States without protecting justice and peace all over the world. So the second phrase, in a way, mitigate the dramatic content of the first one. So I fully agree with Mr. Kwon Chung when he says the issue here, how we are going to operationalize this concept. For sure, not saying that Buddhist sustainable development is better than Christian sustainable development or Islamic sustainable development. It will not work. Because in the past, religions have always been part of the problem. Practically all the wars in the world were generated by religions. So, self-evident that putting the issue on the religious superiority will not work. Second, putting it on a national experience also is harder to believe. Yes, the leadership of His Majesty the King in Thailand is highly respected. One example by Bhutan could also be highly respected international level. But saying that the practice of one nation works better than the practice of others will be very hard to swallow for others. I have a family of 4 children. All of them are married to other religions and to other lifestyles, and I see these couples, my children, how they discuss a number of matters in their own family is extremely complex. For my daughter to understand how for her husband, who is a Muslim, solidarity is a must. You cannot leave if you don't do solidarity, while instead in Christianism it's an option. And how they could put their money only in Islamic bank, because all the other banks in Europe, they live in Europe, make money on money instead of making money on work. So there are a number of issues. So the only hope, I think, is civil society. Civil society and education. Some movement in civil society, like for example Awards, which is one of the largest network of civil society organizations, are very important. They achieve now results. They can obtain the resignation of a prime minister. They already did it. They can obtain a legislation change all over the world. In some countries, Awards in Australia has more members than all the voters of all the members of all the parties in Australia. In Europe, Awards is becoming very, very important. And there are other movements in the environment, in the human rights, in the issue of justice all over the world. For example, the movement for restorative justice, instead of punishing people, trying to recuperate people, is obtaining more result against death penalty than many other parties around the world. So I think we should invest much more on education in order to obtain a very active civil society. Another big group of people who can change the world for me is the private sector. If the private sector understands that profit is a tool and is not a goal, private sector can make a big change, like Warren Buffett has done, Bill Gates have done. Both of them established the rule of giving back 1/2. They said if you reach more than a billion in the States, you must give 1/2 of your richness. Now, the movement of billionaires who are giving out 1/2 of their richness is more than 2,000 people. So 2,000 billionaires have given 1/2 of their richness because Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have suggested it. So private sector can change the world much better than government. Government are dramatically weak all over the world. Politicians is the biggest failure of these generations all over the world. People sometimes focus here on Thailand, but Thailand is a fantastic example of good governance if you compare with Berlusconi, since I am Italian. At least here, when one is corrupted, is convicted. Berlusconi was never convicted in a final way. So governance is a failure all over the world. Civil society can do much better than government. And the religions, the value-based component of religions, be it Buddhism or Christianism or any other, the best thing that they can do is education. If religious people focus on educating their children, they can make a big contribution to humankind. I see so many good religious people who don't care about the education of their children. That is very damaging because the society can be changed only by education, even better than by democracy. What Europe has achieved was mainly achieved before democracy. through education, through public health, through many other disciplines. Thank you very much.
I would like to respond to that comment. I agree with you that finally civic culture will be the answer to that. But when you say civic culture, there has to be an underlying that the civic must have some kind of civic ethics, because without ethics, civic alone wouldn't be able to do much. But and then you say education is the key, and I agree with you on that. But the problem is how to have a civic education with ethics, because the problem nowadays is that even the word morality is a bad word nowadays. So that's why we have to talk about ethics. But there must be some kind of goodness of human being put in this kind of education, and this is the most difficult task. But I agree fully with you that, in fact, business people can be an agent of change much better than any sector in the society. And the reason that is that, when you're doing business on the basis of competition and profit, it only drives business people to go crazy. So they start changing their way of thinking and set the example. And in Thailand, we have a lot of case of business like this. So I think two things that I fully agree with you, that education and business is the way to that. But how to put ethics into education, that is the challenging question.
Now, I would like to invite Professor Takayoshi Kusako to make reflection, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to express appreciation to Gonzalez about presenting this concept of Buddhist approach for sustainable development. I think this framework is giving a chance to think about the limitation of the current framework developed by the economists, especially the issue of utility function, how this utility is captured and calculated. This has been mostly designed to maximize one person's idealistic expansion. And so that means that one can maximize its own welfare by the number of income. But why the number of income matters? Because of the transaction of the goods and services through the currency system. So this suggests, or this implies that we are facing with always the problem that things which can never be counted by currency. For example, your presentation touched on this issue already, compassion, how we can calculate the price or value of the compassion. That is an issue. I think your presentation is suggesting a very important point, which is a weakness of the present market economy, market system in a sense. So one thing I like to emphasize on this is we have to think carefully about the concept of utility again in a careful manner. That's why I think things like happiness, G&H, or well-being receiving more attention right how do we know, for example, Bill Gates has the level of compassion? We do not know that. We only know that Bill Gates has a foundation, and the foundation will provide money for, say, combating AIDS or poverty in developing countries. But we do not know if Bill Gates himself has such compassion, or has appreciating his friends, those who know him, or those who don't know him, the compassion from him, or compassion from others. So that's one point I like to make. So that means framework itself, yes, we have to rethink, and you send a good message. Then while I listen to your presentation, it's quite interesting to see this wisdomism against capitalism. So, right, you put this wisdomism and capitalism. Then I have a question for you. So, how do I understand this? Two keywords: wisdomism and capitalism. When I listen to your presentation, I think about perhaps Buddhist market economy. So then, because I don't deny the importance of market economy, understanding this weakness, price issue. But at the same time, I don't believe there is another system without market. So then I like to ask you, how do I understand this wisdomism? Is it against capitalism, or is it more like a revision of capitalism? That's one question for you. Okay. Then I have another comment. Mr. Chun repeated, he's already absent here, he repeated saying that two taxes issue, the carbon tax can be a solution. But I don't believe that way. Without change of the individual thinking, I don't think it can be the solution. People can be, easily escaping. With this new advancement of the technology, we tax on the carbon, but human beings are so clever to find out a new technology. Perhaps alternative one comes, so maybe switch from that. So unless we have to do something to change the people's mindset, I think that's important. I absolutely agree with this importance of education. Then in the modern education system, so-called kind of system thinking is arising. I think this system thinking is so important to try to utilize this systematic thinking, which factor is related to each other. So we try to expand the world of this system thinking from the very limited version to increase by expanding, say, human beings and nature like this. That kind of exercise could help the people to understand what's actually happening, what's going to be happening if we say consume like that. So I think this education is important step to change this problem we are facing right now. Then last point is speaking of education, in Japan now so-called ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, ESD becomes so popular, and students can learn how to protect, how to conserve materials, and how to conserve the environment through schooling. So this ESD could be one tool to educate people in developing countries and developed countries as well. And one last comment is the issue of security. Why people want to consume more? Why people want to accumulate more money? One reason is insecurity in their life. That's linked to the level of the people's trust to their government. So those who believe in the government, they're happy to pay the high tax, like Nordic countries. But if you ask the same level of tax to Japanese people, I don't think so. Because many people do not have much trust, right? So that's the thing. So insecurity, security. So if we could increase more security to the people, people could follow, people could change
Thank you. I like to respond to you, Sam, and also gonna hand to Dr. Vishai. He is the expert in Buddhist economics on wisdom from his books as well. But for my point, that I put this because I think mindful consumption and production is related. When you like to produce the right amount that's mentioned in the Buddhist economics book and concept, how you know where is the right amount? The right amount is also depend on wisdom, that you must know where is appropriate for you. Everyone may not be the same, because like you have different levels of status and necessary, right? But a kind of a moderation that may relate to the concept of sufficiency economy is not fixed that what is appropriate, but I mean you know where is appropriate for you, what is all, what is too much, and what is unnecessary or unusefulness. In Buddhist, we promote concept of consumption for usefulness, for real usefulness. Even we have a different level of usefulness. Usefulness immediately, and for usefulness for a higher quality of life, this type of thing. So you know what is useful and unuseful. What is the real work and is not the real work, right? And in terms of production as well, in fact, because of the long slide, I cut some slide. I used to bring one slide that Dr. Pichai mentioned about production. Buddhist economic use wisdom as a production mode, something like that. And I think he's the one who can clarify that. Okay. Dr. Pichai, can I keep clear the expand?
Well, actually, I borrow this concept from Marxist interpretation of mode of production. Mode of production means the major factor of production. And we start from traditional communism and slave economy, feudalism, capitalism. And I think this is the time that we used to have Panya, which is similar concept to, not exactly the same, but similar to concept of wisdom. So usually, right now in our production function in the mainstream economy, we talk about labor, capital, and perhaps land, which is no one talk about land anymore, but talk about labor and capital. But among labor and capital, between labor and capital, capital is the most important thing. That's why we are under capitalist system. Namely, we try to accumulate capital in order to improve our economy. Right? But I think, and the problem is that we more concentrate on the economy, but not concentrate on our own happiness. Because you can have big economy, because all these are imaginary situation, because you put some quantitative figure and say that our economy grows by 10%, 20%, we come out to 5,000 trillion yen or whatever. But we never ask what is the happiness of people. And this is why in the new, nowadays, every country, the people try to measure happiness, whether when you have GDP increase, whether your happiness increase or not. So, when you start asking about this happiness, then wisdom is the key concept. And if you think of wisdom as the key concept, it will control your behavior of production and consumption. Of course, I agree with you that the way to distribute products, sometimes market system and price mechanism should be kept working as a minimum guarantee, but it's not necessarily that way anymore, because by giving and sharing could be another alternative. So it's not only limited to the market mechanism. That's what I like to explain to you by this concept. And your last comment is quite interesting. I forgot what is the last one.
Last question.
Security issue.
Yeah, security. Yeah, I think you see problem. I used to write a paper on this, namely that human greed. In the old day, when we still live in tribe, or even in animal herd, security is of the herd itself or the community itself. But when you introduce technology and it helps you to be more individual, then you prefer to be more individual with the help of technology. So after that, if technology becomes your source of security, then you have to accumulate wealth, and this is how greed has developed more and more, and you have to acquire more and more. So if you want to say that you have to provide basic security, you have to ask what kind of security that a person wants. For example, actually I would like to give you one good example, because right now in Thailand it is very well known that we have a community, not only one community, but network of communities called Asok Group. And the Asok Group, no one carry money in their own community. And then the Asok claim that they have 100% tax, namely that all the surplus will go into the central pool, and everyone can draw anything out of their own necessity from this central pool, and their community start keep growing. So this is a perfect example of Buddhist economy and economy based on wisdom.
I'd like to add on a little bit. I think in Buddhism, they place very emphasis on wisdom. That's why it's the happiness at highest level, that form understanding or the relationship of all beings and or natural law of the impermanent self, suffering and selflessness, everything. And that's why we require right view. That's I introduced that BSD must based on right view in 3 main points, right? So that is related to wisdom. How can you have a right view in your life? You must have wisdom to influence your thinking, the view of your happiness from yourself related to other and so on. And also it's also lead to something that related to economic system like production system and consumption. What you should consume, what is appropriate amount, and what should utilize for production, this type of thing. So the movement is driven by wisdom. Right? I think Dr. Abhishek used wisdom. That means the system that driven by wisdom as the central agent. Everything for the way of life, for economics, movement, and also for sustainable development that I introduced, that also related to wisdom, right? And happiness. And I know that this concept, as many people have mentioned, that is very important and it's a big idea. But the problem is that how we can operationalize it, as Mr. Chung mentioned, is a challenge, and how to make everybody accept that. If one people accept and the rest is not, it doesn't work. As he mentioned, that we should have system for redistribution of income or taxing, because not everybody likes to share, right? So this kind of thing is like a kind of implementation problem. And I think it's important now that UN going to implement SDG next year to replace MDG. I don't know for how long it is. And it doesn't change anything. I don't know. Professor Kusako maybe we know that you mentioned this day you work with the person who are forming the SDG. Maybe you give us more information how it's gonna work out and what direction they're gonna be and something like that. I think yesterday you mentioned about SDG. Can you tell about it?
I like Mr. Chun. Although he's with UN, but he's giving us some pessimistic view of this SDG, right? It's kind of extension of SDG plus and plus plus. Okay, so I don't think this SDG can be reflecting the change in concept itself. It's more like a concentrated effort by natural scientists to come up with this development goals. They try to link the environment and economic activities, but I'm not sure the concept like the very strong concept could be reflected into it. No, I don't know, and I don't think it's possible because just like Mr. Chu said, it's a political process. But I think the much more important thing than SDG is how we could increase the number of people who believe in the evaluation of one's well-being, not only from economic security, but non-economic aspects of the life. In other words, quality of life, how they understand, view it, is important. But then wisdom, I also understand, and I don't disagree it. But at the same time, it's difficult to understand what is really appropriate, this appropriate level of wisdom. Again, this technology, because in the human beings, somehow we are still making a progress every day in our life to come up with new idea, new technology. Right? So, for example, say in Japan, now the people are so interested in this IPS technology. So maybe it could cure our body, right? So that's a good thing, perhaps. But I don't know. Say, how do you recommend us a level of appropriateness? So what I'm telling you is that this technology part is so tricky. So yes, I agree with wisdom, but then how the people could apply this wisdom to this new technology? Because as you said, the production function, yes, but money, man, but technology is a factor. So how we can apply this wisdom idea to these economic factors. So I think that's where I like to know, and I'm still having some difficulty.
Well, you see, because I was student of economics myself, and every time the professor told me about labor, capital, and of course, it's implicitly include technology. But then everything sort of focused only into capital, right? And this is why we call our system capitalism. If you try to understand the concept of wisdom, I would like you to think of intellectual ability controlled by some kind of morality or ethics. So if you are a good scientist or technician, you produce something new and useful for other people, but then you have to aware that this kind of thing don't have any bad side effect, right? So the wisdom is a kind of morality part that control your intellectual ability. So this is, but when you ask what level, because there will be different kind of level depend on the mind development of yourself. So, and this is, I mean, I talk with you on the conceptual basis, but to understand it, I mean, Buddha said this is a personal experience. If you don't experience it, then you may understand different things. But this is why it is difficult in Buddhism that a lot of things. The best knowledge in Buddhism is through experience. It's not from, we learn from logical deduction quite easily, all the subject that we learn in the West is from logic. But to learn from your personal experience requires a lot of individual effort, and this is the most difficult part. And this is answer why, it's easy for people to claim to be a Buddhist, but to be a true understanding of Buddha teaching is not that easy.
I fully agree. I agree on the concept that ethics could be a very good tool to communicate and plan better the operationalization of this concept. In fact, in Christianism, for example, ethical capitalism is now becoming a very strong movement in the United States. They got a global meeting of ethical capitalists in Bangkok a few months ago, and there are 3,000 companies, some of the largest in the world, where the CEO subscribed the Bangkok Declaration on Ethical Capitalism. In many Islamic countries, capital which grows on capital without labor is illegal. So you go to prison if you do that. And you cannot open a bank if the bank considers the opportunity of doing money on money, capital on capital. A week ago, the book by Professor Piketty was presented in Washington. As you know, Piketty was an advisor of the Socialist Party in France, not a very successful guru of economics. People consider that he was a bit Marxist in his idea that capital is too strong and labor is too weak. But he presented his book at the World Bank in Washington and the International Monetary Fund, and he got a standing ovation. But all the governors of the World Bank, all the director generals, he was saying it's not good for capital to serve capital. So not only is not good for labor, which is obvious, but also it's not good for capital. That means his book is The Capital, 680 pages, became a bestseller, front page of the Time magazine last week. And positively, he got a good review by the New York Times, by Mr. Christoph, saying, hey, not only is inequity issue, labor, people, that we all know about it, but it's also bad for capital. That economy, which only makes money, which only grows money, is not viable. It's no longer sustainable. So we have to reinvent the fundamentals. So he was making reference to jobs as well as products. In Europe now, there are a number of examples, also in my country, where people accept less jobs, part-time jobs, less product, because they recycle a lot of product, or they put in a circular economy that you have one car for many families, one dishwasher for many families, and so on. And less hours of work, if it contributes more happiness. For example, in Denmark, in Belgium, in Sweden, a woman have the right already to work half-time, 3-4 years, in order to give more time to the children. And the same right is now transferred also to fathers. Because giving more time for the children means to the society the children are better educated. And then the society has less crime. And then the society gains out of it. So focusing on ethics and the fundamental of ethics could be a good tool to operationalize this thing. And starting to measure ethics properly. I think this technology can contribute a lot. Because technology now allows a lot of transparency. For example, in Bolivia, one of the most corrupted countries in Latin America, they achieved zero corruption by one simple law of one article saying that any public works has to be online. Simple. All content is online, all the bids are online, you know who is behind everything, and there is no way to put a funny name of a company which belongs to a family or to the divorced wife of a politician and so on. Everything is online. And anybody can check in the municipality who got what, who won, by what, everything. The town of La Paz, which was the most corrupted town in Latin America, now becoming the less corrupted one. Everything is online. What is that? That is technology. Using technology properly. And you can legislate about that and using technology to increase ethics and transparency.
Yeah. I like to respond to what you mentioned of ethical capitalism. I think this is a kind of transition because people still want to hang up with the concept of capitalism. So they were you know, to transform from capitalist, then you have to go one step further by ethical capitalism or ethical capital. But I would like to get rid of the concept of capitalism altogether, and instead I would say ethical intelligence. Ethical intelligence, because I think the intelligence can create everything, not only capital, so even your technology for online. But I agree with Professor that after all, no matter how high technology you have, it becomes the practice or the culture of people that have ingrained into the people. I'm sure that if we do this online and we are dealing with the Thai people who are corrupted, they have a way to cheat it. So that's why you have to put this kind of ethic into the mind of the people. I mean, this is why it's most important.